Well, folks, we're visiting today with Sanjiv Malhotra. He is with Sparkz. He's the CEO of Sparkz. It's a fascinating company that's moving into West Virginia as we speak in Bridgeport, Harrison County. Sanjiv, thanks for being on the program today.
It's a pleasure, James.
Positively West Virginia is powered by Breezeline high-speed fiber internet and sponsored by Highmark West Virginia, Freedom Key of Morgantown, and Storymaker. With the help of these sponsors, we are able to share the positive business stories of West Virginians, including the one featured in today's episode.
Yes, it's great to have you with us, and I look forward to learning more about Sparkz. It seems like Sparkz has been in the news quite a bit over the last year. Sparkz, Sanjiv, can you tell us a little bit about your company, Sparkz?
Sure. Sparkz is focused on bringing manufacturing of critical materials for a particular kind of lithium battery that's called LFP in short. And LFP stands for lithium iron phosphate. And we are focused on manufacturing the critical material that go into making this LFP battery. And we are possibly the first company in the United States to be fully vertically integrated in the manufacturing of this critical material, basically taking the lithium source, taking the iron source, taking the phosphoric acid, and building the complete value chain, if you may, for the critical material that go into making the battery. So that's what our focus is.
Amazing. I love it. Sanjiv, these lithium batteries, how are they used?
They can be used in multiple applications, James. For example, there are three main applications for lithium batteries, starting with the one that everyone talks about, which is electric vehicles. So it can be used in electric vehicles. The second one is commercial vehicles or off-road vehicles. So, for example, mining equipment, farm equipment, material handling, for example, forklifts that are used in distribution centers or production homes, used in multiple other commercial vehicles, off-road vehicles, even golf carts, for example.
Yeah.
And the third application is energy storage, where it could be used to pair up with the solar farm or with the wind farm, where the LFP batteries could be used as storage. It could be used for commercial and industrial buildings or different applications, again, demand response or frequency regulation or whatever the case might be. Then the third one is residential. So within energy storage, it is all three: grid, commercial and industrial buildings, and residential. So basically, these batteries or the LFP batteries cover an entire wide range of applications.
So Sanjiv, are you manufacturing the materials for the battery production, or are you actually making the batteries themselves? How does that work?
So it's a three-step process, James, if you look at making batteries. First, you make the material. Then you make the cells, which have the material in whether it's a positive electrode or a negative electrode, the cathode or the anode. Then you make a complete battery pack. Traditionally, the United States has started with step three, which is making the battery pack.
Yeah.
And importing cells from China. The Biden-Harris administration, through the Inflation Reduction Act, started a lot of projects for setting up gigafactories for cells, the second step. However, the challenge is we still are dependent on China for step one, or the output from step one, which is the material.
Yeah.
So we are basically addressing that gap. We are filling that gap, making the material, and then we will get into making the cells. So that's how we are going about it. And with regards to the complete battery pack, we have partners who help us in making the complete battery pack. But the biggest pain point today is the first step, which is making the materials. So that's where Sparkz is starting off.
Yeah. So why West Virginia?
Oh, there is a lot of history behind that, my friend.
Yes.
Yes, and as I told you before we started the podcast, I come from coal country, grew up in coal country, so there is that history, which basically has brought me back into what my desire as a youngster was to come back and start something in coal country.
Yes.
So there is definitely, I was a very paramount in my professional as well as my personal aspiration
Mm.
to set up something to give back to the coal community. So that's clearly the first and foremost reason. The second one is again related to the first reason, which is having grown up in coal country, born to a father who worked in the coal community as an engineer.
Mm.
I have seen the discipline that the coal workers have. And discipline is very much needed for coal workers because safety essential, is extremely essential when you go into a mine between the time that you go in and the time you come out.
Mm.
It's ingrained into their well-being, safety. So we need the same level of safety when we are making materials here. So the safety
Fantastic.
and discipline is something that the coal mine workers or the coal workers bring to the table. And the third is essentially, look, West Virginia has welcomed us with open arms. And you West Virginians, you guys are very welcoming, nice people, and we like that.
Thank
So,
you.
yep. So I
Well,
think there are several reasons, but those are the
yeah.
top three
Well,
reasons.
Sanjeev, I think it's really cool because you mentioned you grew up in coal country, but of course that was in India. India's coal country. Now you're in West
Right.
Virginia coal country, and I think that's pretty cool. And I love the fact that you tied the safety aspect in, and how important that is in your company as it pertains to the safety in a coal mine. And those are dangerous jobs, and honestly, they're much needed jobs. We need energy as a country, as a planet. We need energy, and here you are coming back to your roots in essence, and but here in West Virginia, and bringing jobs, bringing a new technology and a new way of looking at things, and you're doing it right here in Bridgeport, West Virginia. Talk a little bit about where you're located there, the former Asahi glass factory in Bridgeport, West Virginia.
So, yeah, as you pointed out, we are in a former glass factory, and this is a building which is almost close to 500,000 square feet.
Hmm.
Very robust building. Has essentially three sections where we could, within the building, set up three separate functions of making these critical materials that go into the LFP batteries. And we have a lot of room to grow.
Yeah.
This is
So
a very large tract of land, so we
yeah.
have a lot of room to grow. The other thing I want to mention,
Mhm.
which is very attractive for us, is there is a lot of available power, and making batteries is a power hungry business. So there
Mhm.
is a lot of available power, and we're working now with the county and the city to ensure that we have enough power for us to be able to scale up there.
Mm.
And we have a rail line that comes into our site, into our building. So all these are must-haves that we essentially already have in our building.
Yeah. So I think it's fascinating, because you're talking about renewable type energy, but you're also renewing a building. And I'm of the mindset that, we have a lot of infrastructure here in West Virginia, former steel factories, former glass factories, like you were just talking with the Asahi glass factory plant that was shuttered several years ago. And now you're moving back into that, repurposing that building.
Yes.
And I think that's one of my missions. I see all these, if you've spent any time in West Virginia, I'm sure you've driven through a town or two that almost looks like a ghost town with dilapidated, structures and so forth. And I'm like, I always wonder, like, why does that building sit there and just rust, when somebody could come in and rejuvenate that building existing, not necessarily have to build a brand new building and bring that place back to life. And I feel like that's what you're doing to some degree.
Yes, James, we sure are. And look, I'm going to give you a political answer here.
Okay.
There's a political answer to everything, but there's clearly a huge political answer here. The United States is at this inflection point where we either say we give up, let China rule the world of manufacturing for batteries, solar, semiconductor, whatever the case might be. Or we say no. Over the course of next 3, 4, 5 years, we will work our rear ends off to create an ecosystem where we become, I use the word we become, okay? We are not there yet. We become the superpower of manufacturing. And I'm very hopeful that the incoming administration, the Trump-Vance administration, is going to put a lot of resources, and it's not always financial resources, it's legislative resources, policy resources that'll enable this to happen.
Yeah.
First and foremost, that's needed is we have to have control on our supply chain. We have to have control on the critical materials that go into, whether it is a solar, whether it is a fuel cell, whether it is batteries, whether it is semiconductor. We need to have control on the supply chain. And that is where Sparkz is looking at focusing is start with the supply chain, get to the input raw materials, which is what we are going to be doing in West Virginia. And if we can have that control over the course of the next 3, 4, 5 years, I think it's a battle we have won. I think it's not only going to bring back to work the factories that were shuttered down. Like you said, there are several ghost towns, West Virginia and other neighboring states in the Appalachia. All across, I have traveled extensively in the Appalachia, and we see ghost towns.
Yeah.
So these are factories, like I said, the factory we are in, this is a very solid building. This was built quite a few years back, but very solid. So these factories can be brought back to life. Jobs can be brought back to the communities. People can be trained and retrained. These are very disciplined people who can be brought back to work. And I think that's basically the crux of the economic upliftment that the new administration is talking about, that essentially we control our fate and our destiny by doing so, rather than saying, look, I'm going to make this component and I'll depend on China for the remaining component. No, that will never happen. A classic example, as I said, I'll start with the political answer. A classic example is a very large battery company that was coming up in Scandinavia called Northvolt. And they just shut down because they were doing exactly that I will depend on China for the raw material, for the critical materials, and I'll make the cells. No, you cannot do that. You need to look at it as an ecosystem approach. Like I told you, the 3-step process: make the material, make the cells, make the battery packs. And I'll tell you, that is success basically staring us in the face.
Yeah, amazing. Sanjiv, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. This is Positively West Virginia.
Your prescriptions are designed to keep you healthy, active, full of life. At Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield, we're making vital medicine more affordable. Because when your prescriptions don't cost an arm and a leg, you can use those limbs for something more meaningful. Because life. Highmark Blue Cross Blue Shield, West Virginia.
Folks, we're back. We're visiting with Sanjiv Malhotra with Sparkz. They're a battery and a lithium battery component and material production facility getting ready to open in 2025 in Bridgeport, West Virginia, Harrison County. Sanjiv, thank you so much. You're an amazing person to bring this company to West Virginia, and I'm very excited to see what you guys do. What is the thing you're most excited about for Sparkz right now?
Well, the thing that gets me very, I would say, riled up, excited is that we are playing a minor part in this major game here. The major game here is let's bring manufacturing of lithium batteries back to the United States.
Yep.
And our focus on essentially enabling the production of raw materials or production of the critical raw materials is going to be something that is extremely crucial for the industry. And by the way, James, I did not mention, but 100% of our supply chain of the raw material is US based, whether it's lithium, whether it's iron, whether it's phosphate, it's all US based.
Amazing.
And in West Virginia, we are going to process these materials. And then, as I told you earlier, then we will look at making cells, but one step at a time. So playing this role and working with the state of West Virginia, working with our partners, looking very closely to working with the new administration, I think that is something that's very exciting to not only me, but to my entire team.
Yeah, that's fantastic. You know, when you were talking about gaining control of the supply chain, I think about the early days of 2020 when we were going into the beginnings of the pandemic and you couldn't buy basic necessities here in America, you know, and it seems like we're still to some degree still reeling from that, you know, supply chain issues. You still hear about it. And I think, you know, especially when it comes to manufacturing, and as you said, to become the superpower of manufacturing here in the United States, I love that. And in order to do that, we have to gain control of the supply chain, especially in mission critical things such as energy and the storage of electricity. And you're playing right into that with Sparkz and these lithium phosphate batteries. So I think that's amazing. Where, in other words, like when you get this plant set up and it's already built, obviously you're moving into an existing facility, but you're setting up your manufacturing lines and the processing lines for the materials. How many jobs will this create down there in Harrison County?
So phase one will be about 75 jobs. That's direct jobs. And we are estimating about 40 to 50 indirect jobs in, doing the upgrading of the infrastructure and all that other stuff. So in total, about 125 both direct and indirect jobs in phase one.
Mm-hmm.
Phase two is going to be adding another 100 jobs. So total, we are looking at 200 jobs at this facility. These will be direct jobs. But more than that, and you know it, James, once you set up production, you have 200 workers there, 200 families involved. There is going to be a lot of derivative jobs. There'll be a lot of other businesses that will come up. You know, there'll be restaurants coming up. There'll be a lot of other supporting businesses.
Yep.
And I do not have a number, but the idea is essentially in our own little way, we would love to be playing a role in upliftment of, as you said, Harrison County, Bridgeport, etc. So in all of West Virginia, if this goes well, our thought process is, James, that there are others who follow Sparkz into the state and set up shop there. So
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a visionary idea that you have. Now, is Sparkz currently, we've been spending a lot of time in West Virginia. Do you have other operations around the globe, or can you talk a little bit about your company overall?
Yeah, we do. I'm seated right now here at our corporate office where we have our R&D and engineering function in Livermore, California, in the eastern segment of the San Francisco Bay Area. And we recently announced one factory coming up in Sacramento. And we have secured a site, or secured a building there, which is close to about 130,000 square feet. So we will be setting up manufacturing there also. So those essentially are the three sites for us: R&D and engineering here in Livermore, as well as our corporate functions, and then two manufacturing locations, West Virginia and Sacramento. The beauty of all of this is, James, that the West Virginia plant is going to be a feeder plant into the Sacramento. So basically, we have these two facilities working in tandem with each other. The material that we make in West Virginia is going to be railed across the country to Sacramento, where it'll be finished.
Wow, that's
Yeah,
that's super cool.
That is, isn't it? So
Yeah.
basically, we will work in tandem to help with the economy of both the regions,
Yeah.
both West Virginia as well as California.
So we talked about the safety aspect. We talked about the mining aspect, your heritage, coming from the coal fields in India to the coal fields in West Virginia. The supply chain that you talked about and having control of that and these raw materials, is that part of the ideal location here in West Virginia? You mentioned the rail connectivity, having a rail line right through your building and all those things, but is the access to raw materials here good as well?
Very much so.
Okay.
Very much so. There is iron obviously coming from various sources, Minnesota, North Dakota, even New York, and phosphate coming from Florida. And lithium is coming from North Carolina. Lithium is coming from Nevada. Lithium is also coming from soon Arkansas. And in California, we have Salton Sea. So it's widely dispersed, but the iron and the phosphate that we need is closer to West Virginia. And lithium is obviously dispersed across the continent. So yes, it's all very much within rail distance.
Yeah, so I think one thing, West Virginia has been in the extraction industry, ever since we've been a state with coal mining and so forth, and even other raw materials. But when I think about the supply chain and I think about this kind of a movement of back towards energy independence, you mentioned China. Can we break free from not only the I guess the dependence, if you will, on Chinese manufacturing, but other international energy sources? It's one thing to harvest that energy here, and maybe even in West Virginia, right? Natural gas, coal, wind, even nuclear here in the United States. But we have to store that energy somewhere, right?
Yes.
And so that's where your company comes in. Really, I think is the actual storage of that energy. If we want to be energy independent, we've got to be able to store it and house it.
Exactly. Your narrative, I don't think it was a question, it was a very to the point narrative, James. I'm going to add to that.
Okay.
West Virginia has been an extractive economy.
Yes.
Extract and provide energy. At one point, it was providing energy for the entire United States.
That's right.
We have to go back to those days and be very proud of our heritage here. We being West Virginia. If you would allow me to be part of West Virginia, I would like to add, James, that we should also add another component to the extractive economy, which is the processing aspect of it. When West Virginia led the coal industry or the coal economy for the US. We were not only extractor, but we were also processing it to energy. You had the coal thermal plants. I think the same has to come back again with batteries, with lithium batteries,
Mm.
that we process the material, which is exactly what we are going to be doing at our Bridgeport facility, that we extract the iron, the phosphate, and convert that into a value added component of lithium batteries.
Yeah.
So if we start
Amazing.
looking at it that way, it obviously adds high paying jobs, adds to the economy, and creates a lot of other derivative industries. So that's one thing I wanted to add, that let's have the extractive economy, but also add the processing economy as we look at being vertically integrated.
I love it.
Then
Yep.
then you bring up a very valid point, which is basically leave no child behind. Look, there is natural gas, there is coal, okay? There are I do not call them renewable or clean technology, I just call them non-conventional energy sources.
Yeah.
Solar, wind, all of these, gas, starting with gas and the non-conventional and the coal, they all need storage. And that's where batteries come into being. Same thing with nuclear. So that's the storage part. We have to, as I said earlier, we have to have a control on our destiny, our fate.
Yeah.
That's why we have to make sure that going from the extractive economy for lithium batteries, we become the processing superpower and make lithium batteries. If
Yeah.
we do that, we have control on generating technologies, just like, we talked about a few of them, and we have a control on the storage technologies. That completes the full chain. And I'll tell you again, I think the new administration is taking a very favorable view of the entire ecosystem. And that's the way it should be.
Yep. I love it. This is Positively West Virginia. We'll be right back. Stay connected with an unbeatable deal from Breezeline. Voted best in Mountaineer Country for their reliable, high-speed fiber internet for a low cost, Breezeline is the best gig in town. Here at Interaction Media, we rely on high-speed internet every single day to ensure we can deliver the best content possible for our clients and when we publish Positively West Virginia each week. That's why we use Breezeline. It's affordable, fast, and they're great people as well. Learn more about Breezeline's internet, TV, and mobile options at breezeline.com. Folks, we're back. Our guest today is Sanjiv Malhotra. He's with Sparkz, a relatively new company here in West Virginia. They've been in the news headlines for many months in their opening of this Bridgeport, West Virginia plant, creating a new economy, if you will, in the storage, the battery storage for energy here in West Virginia, the materials and the processing for lithium batteries here in West Virginia, used for a variety of things. So, Sanjiv, right now, in terms of getting your plant operational and so forth, what's the biggest challenge you're facing right now?
Well, more than challenge, I think these are tasks lined up for us, making sure that the right infrastructure is there. I talked about power earlier on, so making sure that we have the right amount of power as we scale up. The other aspects of utilities like water, sewage, rail, all of these essentially need, if some of these need to be upgraded, we want to be working very closely with the city, with the county. And, I was there in West Virginia about a week or so ago, and I'm looking to be back here in the next couple of weeks. But that work has started to make sure that we have the right infrastructure in place so that when all of that is there, it's like a plane taxiing to take off.
Yeah.
And that's what we want to be doing. We have had that experience once with Sacramento, where basically you set up the infrastructure and then you just take off. So that's one aspect of it. The second is a very exciting one, very near and dear to my heart, which is getting the workforce ready. And there we're working with the United Mine Workers. And we've had a very good relationship, a friendship, actually, I should say, with folks from UMWA. A very good friend of mine, Phil Smith, whom I was introduced to a couple, 2, 3 years back. He is the chief of staff to the president, Cecil, and State Senator Mike Caputo. These two folks have been very instrumental in setting up the partnership that we have with UMWA. The idea here is, James, that essentially Sparkz, along with UMWA, is going to be training and providing the necessary workforce development for the folks who we will be hiring using their career centers. So they have a career center close to Pittsburgh, which is not too far from where we are.
Yeah.
And we are looking to start working very closely with the mine workers, the United Mine Workers, and providing the workforce development. And one thing, as I said, it's very near and dear to my heart, is not just the training, it's the training and the retraining. Let's say we have an employee, she comes along and says that, look, I have worked at Sparkz for a couple of years. I'm a line operator. I would like to be a supervisor. These career centers are going to be very instrumental in providing them the necessary retraining so that they can move to the next role. And I'm a big fan of organically growing the team so that they can see an upside in their career path, in their professional career.
Yeah, I love that. That's awesome. Sanjiv, what's the vision long term for Sparkz? What's that? What do you see?
Well, the vision is essentially that Sparkz wants to be the leading critical materials company when it comes to lithium batteries. And what that translates into is setting up several production facilities in the United States. As I said earlier, those are very essential as we bring the supply chain home for us to essentially be the global superpower, and then essentially grow beyond the United States to other geographies, other nations. So that's the global vision.
Yeah, I love it. Very clear and concise. And we talk about becoming the superhero of manufacturing. Sparkz is the superhero of battery, lithium battery production and materials. I love it. I think it's very cool. And it's right here in West, by God, Virginia. Sanjiv, when you think about other CEOs, whether they're in California or Florida or maybe even in Pennsylvania, what do you tell them about your experience and why West Virginia? What would you say to them if they're thinking about, starting a plant, opening up a business in West Virginia?
More than me telling others, I try to learn from others, actually, James.
Yeah.
I have a friend. His name is Danny. He's the owner of this building, of the site in West Virginia in Bridgeport.
Okay.
One thing I've learned from Danny, I've learned a lot of things. But one thing I learned from this guy is patience. Rome wasn't built in a day.
Yes.
And this guy, he and I, we speak sometimes even pretty much every other day, sometimes, once in 2 weeks. But I've known the guy now for a couple of years, both he and his wife, Danny and Joyce. And so I've learned patience, that it takes time, because if you're going to build a solid organization, whether in manufacturing or anything, patience is what is needed to build a solid foundation. So believe me, here is Sanjiv coming from Silicon Valley, an entrepreneur of some sorts, and goes to West Virginia and meets these people. And I talked about Mike Caputo, I talked about Phil Smith and Danny. These people have taught me a trick or two. And the trick or two is basically, yes, one step at a time, one brick at a time, and then the foundation is built. And I think that's the wisdom that I have gathered from these folks that I typically pass on to others.
Yeah, it's beautiful. Thank you for sharing that. And definitely wisdom, wise words coming from multiple sources, Sanjiv. So thank you for that. We've covered a lot in this interview, and I'm grateful for the investment you're making in West Virginia, your commitment to our state and our people, and, really to this concept of bringing manufacturing and controlling the supply chain back into the United States. And West Virginia is going to be right at the forefront of that with your company, Sparkz. Sanjiv, do you, first of all, how can folks learn more about Sparkz and perhaps even get in contact with you?
I think we have on our website, and I can give you the email address, but it's
Yeah.
on our website also in the contact section. I think it's info@sparks.energy.
Yeah.
So folks can reach out through that. And very, very happy to, talk to folks.
Yeah.
And look, as I said earlier, I'm starting to make a lot more frequent trips to West Virginia.
Mhm.
Happy to give a talk. Maybe we can choose a venue in Morgantown. Maybe you can arrange that, James.
Yeah, I would love to. Maybe you can
Yeah.
come speak to a group here in West Virginia about what's going on. I would love to host you on that. I'll take you up on that.
That will be wonderful. I have, and I continue to give talks at universities here in, California, as well as done so at Duke University and a few others around the country. Maybe I can give a talk at West Virginia University to,
Yeah.
students there. So
Yep.
definitely love to do that because, these are the folks with whom they will be our future colleagues in the company. They are the people with whom we will be partnering. So
Yeah.
yeah, please let me know. Actually, Abby will get in touch with you.
Yep. It
My chief of
sounds
staff.
wonderful.
We'll set this up. Yeah. So
And of course, your website is sparks.energy, and we'll make sure we have links to all that in the show notes as well as social media. Sanjiv, I just I'm in awe of just listening to this vision that you have and the expertise that you've gathered around the table. You got a great company, and you're bringing it right here to West Virginia. Our guest once again is Sanjiv Malhotra with Sparkz. It's been an honor to have you, sir, on our podcast. I think what you're doing is amazing, and I want to encourage you to keep up the great work.
thank you so much, James.
Yes, sir. We'll talk soon. Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of Positively West Virginia. If you or someone you know would be a great guest on our show, drop us a line on our website at positivelywv.com. And of course, we appreciate your encouragement, your thoughts, your sharing these stories along the way as well. We're very appreciative of that as well. On behalf of our entire Positively West Virginia team, including our producer today, Mr. Jimmy Murray, behind the controls over there, I'm your host, Jim Matuga. Stay positive, West Virginia.
We'd like to thank our partners, Highmark West Virginia, Freedom Key of Morgantown, Interaction Media, Storymaker, and our studio sponsor, Breezeline, for helping to share these positive stories. If you'd like to become a sponsor of the Positively West Virginia podcast, visit positively.wv.com/sponsor.